Hey world, this is my intro. Here we go.
I love
So
your intro. It's
it's
so good.
it is. There's a lot of thought put into it. So it's end of the day recap day with Annie tonight, the magical human being she is, and these conversations that we've been having have been really good, right? And I think they're coming across to people in many different ways, and it's showing two different perspectives of where we're both at, where we're looking to go, and how we're getting there. Um, and it obviously has the male female perspectives, which is different than just one or the other. So what I want to talk about, I don't know where Kenny is. I miss Kenny. Like we miss our one viewer. Oh, here he is. He just showed up. We're good. I feel much more.
We're okay.
I do. I feel good about life. Um, so what we want to do is today was a very interesting day for both of us, and I felt like we had to do a recap together just because there was just so much going on. So Annie, why don't you start first, and then
I just went through like roller coaster of emotions today, just trying to get a handle on everything that I have going on. And nothing bad, by the way. Like these aren't bad things. These are new endeavors, new parts of my business, my professional world, my network. We're moving. It's a good move. We're excited, me and the kids. And it's just a lot at once. It feels very overwhelming and it presents it presents as anxiety. And I don't even realize it when it's happening, but it like takes a hold of me and it feels like a lot of weight on my like throat and chest. And it's hard to breathe. So I have to really practice reaching out for support, meditation, breathing, coming back to center, all the things that I preach that I will admittedly say that are much easier to say than to do. But in order to be my truest self, I have to practice what I preach. So that was today in a nutshell.
and the funny part is for me, my day started out really rocky, right? Like I was just in an off mood all morning. Had tough conversations, and then it started shifting, and I found my clarity when I needed it most, right? I found my clarity. And I guess it's one of those things, right? To be there for yourself, you need to find your clarity. But when somebody else needs you, your clarity kicks in. And from that point forward, the day's been really good, actually. It's been an amazing day. Um, like I started writing, which for me is just weird because I don't write. Um,
You do right, actually. You do. So
apparently,
maybe you didn't, but you do now.
apparently, I found a new skill set. It's been very interesting. Like I enjoy it, right? And it's becoming a clearer way for me to express myself, and I'm actually becoming very clear with it, which is pretty interesting for me because my whole life getting thoughts out of my head has been very difficult, right? Like I've had so much trouble with it. My mind doesn't slow down enough. It doesn't. I just couldn't grab thoughts. Being an empath doesn't help, right? Because I feel everybody else's stuff. So, like, it really gets mixed in with mine a lot of times. And until I started working on myself and finding myself and appreciating myself, respecting myself, loving myself, finding my worth, right? Like, I couldn't identify what was mine and anybody else's. It's unfortunate that at a young age, I had nobody to teach me these things. And it's no fault of my parents or the school system. Well, yeah, it is, but like the school system's horrendous. But it's there. It just didn't exist then, right? If you didn't grow up in a family that experienced it, then you didn't know about it. And even when you did grow up in a family that experienced it, they really didn't want to talk about it. So it's challenging.
What I find so interesting with you writing is that's my thing. I'm a writer. I love to write. I blog. I express myself much better, in my opinion, in the written word. But we've almost swapped spaces because I've started doing like quick blips or impromptu like lives and feeling a real catharsis when I do that. And that is not my thing or was not. So similarly to you, I feel like I'm finding this new way to show myself. And that has to do with this self worth piece, and finding that person in me that I love and is has value and is able to come to the table and make a quick 3-minute video, and it can matter and impact someone, and it can help me too, because after I did that today, the past couple of times I did that, I felt lighter, and I felt like I made it. Probably, I'm going to guess, similarly to how you felt after you wrote. I mean, and you were so huge on saying, I don't write, that doesn't help me. It was like you were fighting that piece.
It's funny because like I always felt like I was better on video because I express myself clearer, and when I talk, I have this a way of getting my emotions across better, and I'm just a very very empathetic. I'm very vulnerable, and I'm very comfortable being that way, right? Like I'll talk about anything. I don't care who's watching. I don't care about any of that stuff. So for me, video always just I felt more comfortable with it. Um, the writing part is interesting for me because I've never been so clear, and I think that was the difference, right? Like I've never had the peace in my mind to be able to write, and that's my whole life. Now that I'm finding this inner peace, or at least working on it, right? It's not there yet, but it comes in spurts. I'm finding that when I do have that peace, I write, and it's on topics that are very relative to where I'm at, right, and where I want to go, and how I'm getting there. And at some point, I'll allow other people to see them. But for now, it's for me, right? It's like this almost journal of where my thoughts are at that moment that I could look back.
No, it is. That's what it is. It's
Oh, is
not.
it? Is it?
It
Is
is.
it?
Yes, and it's so interesting to see you do that and kind of come out of your something that really triggered you, which was writing for a long time. And because I heard you said to me, I won't do it. I'm not doing it. It doesn't help me. It's not how I communicate. It's not how I show my feelings. And now all of a sudden you've reached this point of clarity and you're like, I think I'm just going to write. And you're really feeling like, it shows you the growth over this amount of time where you've allowed, as you have said to me, so well today, so clearly, like you've allowed yourself to push against what's natural to you and what feels good at the moment, maybe, or what your go-to is. And you've allowed the writing to pour out, and it's helping you because you're seeing your value and your worth in it. I think you know that.
It is, and the way that I'm writing is cathartic as well because I'm writing my thoughts at the moment, but I'm also writing questions for me to refer back to, and just kind of answering them at that moment. And then, as time goes by, I can look back and say, that was my question that day. Now my question's this, right? And this is how far I've come from it. But I mean, there's obviously somebody who inspired me tremendously, and that would I would even consider it, right? So it's without that, I would have never wrote. I mean, I just wouldn't. I wasn't comfortable with it.
Well, one thing that you said that just stuck out to me was your question then versus your question now, if you're looking over time, but it's also your answer then versus your answer now. So that changes with your growth as well. And what I love the most about my journaling and my writing is looking to see that gradual sort of change and progression and way of thinking and how that can change and how some things really stay patterns and stay the same throughout. So both questions and answers can change, or sometimes they don't, but you can see that.
Well,
And it's libraried, if you will.
and
Catalog.
I also yeah, and I also think that at some point, I mean, that's the reason I'm dating them all, right? So that I can have a track record of the date. That, and I'm pretty retentive about that stuff. So, um, but I think like at some point, showing the world that might be a benefit to others because it will show them the progress over time, and it will also ask them, have them look at things a little bit differently, right? I think that there will be a perspective that could be shared there that will be insightful to where they might be at the moment, or where they were, or where they want to get, right? Because I'm in a completely different place than I was a month ago,
Well,
two.
they're very reflective. So when you write them, you're journaling your experience, but at the same time, there's a lot of reflection in your questions. So you can go back and people of course would benefit from that. I mean, that's why I write, to not just to be heard or seen. Oh, we have a good aura. I'm so excited. We needed that. I needed to hear that. Kenny said we have a good aura around us.
So
So
so surprising.
yes. So, I think that writing can say this is where I am, but it can also reflect on and talk about sort of where you're going. And I think that's what your writing does. It's reflective on where I've been and where I'm going. And I think that all of that is important.
Yeah, and I'm gonna push you a little bit here, and it might make you uncomfortable, but I'm gonna push you anyway. Um,
Here we
there,
go.
no, but I think this is important for you as well to understand. There was a very similar trigger this morning as there was a week ago when you had it for a couple days, right? There was a very similar trigger.
Mhm.
I mean, I didn't realize that until I just said it, to be honest. It didn't come to my mind until just now.
I did. I did.
I it's
So,
just
so let's put it like this. Similar trigger meaning a very similar occurrence happened last week around the same time. And I went into a little bit of a dive, like I took a nosedive as far as emotionally. And you're comparing this week and last. And I think what you're saying is that I think what you're going to say is about my timeout, like how I came out of it.
yeah, I mean, last time it took you down for a while, right? I mean, it was
Yeah,
a little
derailed me.
intense.
Derailed me.
Yeah, I mean, it took you off track for a good 18, 20 hours.
Hmm.
This
Yeah, I was
time,
I was pretty sidelined,
this time it was about 4. I
if
mean,
that. Mhm.
right. That's a pretty remarkable difference in a week, right? That's pretty
Thank
remarkable.
you. Thank you.
Um, and that shows the work you're doing, right? And it also, I think it also shows the clarity of how it happened also, because I think it was more transparent and more clear of how it happened this time, and the communication on your side was definitely clearer.
Mhm.
Um,
But it was definitely like a very similar feeling that I had and I was carrying, and that's how my anxiety and that's how my upset and my feelings present. So, it doesn't necessarily mean the same exact thing happened, but the bottom line is I was derailed for a lot less time. I wasn't even derailed today. I just was like off for a little bit. And I get very scared when I have those feelings. Like I get like, the negative thoughts just pour.
well,
And go ahead.
it's a dark place, right? I mean, I've been there many times in my life, right? And there were times where I was younger where I wanted to die, where I wanted to kill myself, when I wanted to do all these things. And when I look back and I reflect upon it, as I would go into those dark holes, it was just that snowball effect, because everything
Mhm.
just, like, even the good things just seemed horrible and overwhelming, right?
Totally. Like I couldn't agree more.
Like every little thing just was piling on, and it was like that pressure just kept building, and for me it was always an anvil or quicksand or drowning feeling.
Mhm.
Maybe it
That
was that
feeling really, really bad. I don't think I was there today, but I think I was at a place where I just like I just didn't want to feel like that. And I felt just overwhelmed with emotion. And I'm controlling when it comes to myself. I'm really controlling. And
you don't say.
I want to what's
You don't say.
and I want to feel good and I want to do good and I want to, complete what I want to complete and I want to produce what I want to produce and right then, not anyone else's timeline, my timeline. And that sets you up for a disaster sometimes.
It does when it's not being communicated properly, right? When there's others involved and the communication isn't there, and it takes both sides to communicate. So if the communication isn't clear, then it takes it off. It takes it off rail, right? And another thing that's remarkable about today is the clarity that came out of it, and the reflective moments that came out of it were so powerful and important, just like last week, right? Last week was this amazing snowball effect of positivity once it happened. And I feel like it's almost the same way again today, except today it was, 2 to 4 hours, and last week it was 18, right?
Mhm.
So I think it has the same. I think the downswings are getting less, but the difference is also today you allowed, right? You also, whatever it was, you accepted about it. You accepted it. You communicated it, which is not your strong point when it comes to that stuff. And me either. When I get into that hole,
Yeah,
communication.
I'm inward. I'm like,
Yeah,
no,
no,
I'm shut
nope,
off. No.
nope, nope.
And
Here
that's
comes.
so bad because and so like opposite of what we should do because it's not helpful. It's so much more helpful when you reach out and you try to get some support or even if you don't feel like someone will understand, like trust me, they will relate in some way or even if they don't, someone will be there for you if you have a good support system. I just think it's almost going so against the grain of how I feel. I just feel completely inward and shut down. And without fail, when I reach out for support, I feel better. And I mean, I pulled my car over to the side of the road and I made a video.
Yeah,
Like, I was like, I can't wait until later. I was on the way to my son's baseball game and I'm like, I need to pull over in this Chinese restaurant parking lot and like stand against the wall where there's like bricks and ivy behind me and just people were driving by beeping and looking. Like I was just videoing myself talking about the Eagles imploding and just getting my feelings out there because I'm like, you know what? If I could do one thing, like maybe someone else is feeling this and maybe they're having a hard time coming out of it. And like I just want them to know I'm no different. And I allowed. And it was difficult and it hurt. But it got me out of it so much faster than fighting it.
well, that's the thing, right? Because we're very similar with that. We go very inward and very dark and very deep real quick. Like, I mean, it's instant. There's no hesitation in it, right?
Mm-mm.
So, like, we're very similar in that, and I think at that point, what we do is then we start pushing away people, right? And that's what I do. I push, and if pushing isn't working, then I throw, and if throwing isn't working, then I find a brick wall to run into, right, head
Right.
first. It comes to a point where I feel like now that I'm allowing and I'm not fighting it anymore, yeah, because everything that I'm working on, I have these emotions that are just constantly flowing now, right? Like I'll be laughing 1 minute and then crying the next minute, just because I have so much going through me over 41 years of burying shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like all this processing as I'm going through this work, as I'm doing these things, as I'm waking myself up, as I'm becoming more aware of myself, all these guilts and feelings that I have, shames, whatever it is, are just coming out and I'm allowing it to flow, right? I'm not fighting it anymore. If I need to cry, I cry. If I want to laugh, I laugh.
That's so anti what we're taught
Yes.
as a society and as a people and in whatever. I have an emotional family. It's not about your family. It's just we are not taught to let our feelings flow. We're taught to bury them and push them down. Even if we come from emotional people, like if you're swinging all over the map, you're not gonna, like it's okay. You're not crazy. You're not weird. Like it's it's okay. Like you're not alone if you feel that. Like moods swing and the most important message is it's okay. You said it to me today. It's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
Sounds so cliche and like but it's so true. Like it really is okay for a little bit to not be okay.
It's okay even if it lasts a day or two, right?
No,
If you're
that's what I mean. A little bit. I just
if you're processing, what's the difference, right? If you're dwelling, there's a different story. But if you're processing and you're
Well, and I
allowing,
mean, when I say a little bit, I also mean like, if someone is in the depths of despair for like
yeah,
2 weeks or
yeah,
more, then that's maybe something to look further into. But you don't have to like bash yourself. Like this is what I have done in the past where
mm,
I like bash myself immediately. Like, what's wrong with you? Look around. You have so much to be grateful for. It's like that shame and blame. And it's just, what is the point of that? It's so useless. That voice just tells me like basically I'm shit.
right.
Like you
Well,
don't have right to feel this way. You have no right. You have no value to feel this way. Mm-mm.
and that's the thing. Like I do that too, but then what I do in turn is I start trying to prove my worth outward, right, rather than looking in. and I just start spewing shit. Like I just spew.
Or
It's
you
like
did. I don't know if you do that
I
anymore.
don't think
Maybe you did.
I don't do that now actually. So I
You're
should
more
say
aware.
did. I am more aware now, and I pause and I process and I allow. But that's what I did, right? Like I was just this vacuum on reverse, right? Like Spaceballs when they hit the vacuum and then they did it the opposite way and everything went back in place. Like it was just that's what I felt like, right? Like it was just bleh, everywhere, all over the place.
Because you're searching for something to fill that feeling and make that feeling go away and put a band-aid on it or fill the void, and it just won't work. It does the opposite. It has the opposite effect.
It does, and
Really
and the shames are really bad, right? Those
does.
shames they creep up on you, and it's just like they suffocate you.
And I don't think people really realize that what you just said. Like when I introduced you to Brene, like when I told you about Brene, like your eyes were shown something that you've never seen. Like I don't think you
No,
realize like the amount of shaming, that self shame that we put on our, that we inflict. Um, Whether it's, just you're bad. Just that's the message. You're bad.
well, I just want to go buy like a case of those books and send it to every therapist I ever had. Although that might be a pallet of books, but
It
like
is.
I'd really just want to send it to everyone I ever went to because apparently they missed something.
I know. It's
But
because
it's
it was never investigated really before she did it. Like no one ever really took a look at the shame and what surrounds us when we inflict that upon ourselves. And it's really detrimental. So if someone's listening and they have that voice in their head that's telling them you know, they are bad. Basically, that's what shame is. What you're doing, what you're thinking, what you're saying is bad. You are bad. You're a bad person.
right.
And you're not. You're not a bad person. And what you're doing and saying is okay. Even if you have to change it, it can be changed. But
Yes.
you're not a bad person.
Well, and again, right? I think part of it is this, this spiritual grounding that I'm finding, right? Because it's also helping me on that level to be able to find my footing there. So it's helping me to forgive myself better. It's helping me to be present more. It's calming me down. It's putting me into a mindset that's completely polar extreme opposite of a few months ago, right? And it's opening me up and clearing my mind so that I can actually think and talk and communicate clearly. Other than then, um,
Yeah.
yeah, my thoughts and my emotions and uh, I love. Um, I think that's it though, right? Like that's a big part of it for me. Like I'm working on the mind and I'm working on reprogramming my triggers, reprogramming how I react, reprogramming all these things. But I'm working on the spiritual side as well, right? And the mind thing ties in with the emotions, and so does the spiritual thing. And it's all just a complete healing process. And my whole life, I was always trying to do one, right? And I figured, and I'm doing physical as well, so that's a whole different story. But like, I always wanted to do one. Well, let me do one first. Once I get
Mhm.
one done,
You
once I
start,
get one done, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Once
You
I
check
get one,
that box. I'm so
you
much
know,
better emotionally.
oh yeah,
I'm
yeah, this is
down.
perfect, perfect there. So let's move
I'm
on to
good. I'm good. Then I'll start working out.
yeah. I mean, but how they tie in, like to me, it's like
Everything
this.
is interwoven.
It really is. And when you're missing a piece, it's so hard to find your true self and be your truest, right? Like you can be your best self daily. So I'll never take that away from anybody. Being your best self daily is completely different. But being your true self and who you're in your soul and in your heart and in your mind who you're supposed to be, those three need to line up. And
I think that's the hard. You just nailed the hardest part of all of this healing and the journey is aligning the three.
yes, it's
It's
very difficult,
very difficult.
especially for extremely damaged and broken people like me, like I was. Like because I was just so twisted and all over the map. I mean, I had a spiritual awakening in 2008 and yeah, that didn't work out. But
You're doing it now. You're
right,
aligning. It doesn't mean it's perfectly aligned, but you have to practice every day. But you at least see it. Whereas I think it can be easily missed. It's like, I'm doing all the right things. Why isn't this working? But it's because all the pieces aren't aligning, right?
But again, it's about having the right people around you, right? Because if you don't have the right people around you, then who's going to bring it to your attention? Somebody who's not spiritually involved isn't going to be able to bring that to you. They're just not, right? Somebody who's not working on their mind and working on their emotions isn't going to be able to show you that piece, right? Like when you sent me Brene, I never even thought of that piece. I never even looked at that piece. And
Mhm.
God knows I had shames that would like, scar anyone for life.
Everyone does. Everyone
Right.
does. It's
And that's
crazy.
it is. And I'm glad that it's being spoken about now, but I don't think it's being spoken about enough, right?
Mhm.
And you can tell by the micromanagers and the managers that shame their employees, right? Like, I mean, it's a big thing, oh, you're not doing as well as this person. You're not doing this. You're leaving early. You're always, 3 minutes late from lunch. Your projects are perfect, but it's like,
Right, right.
it's that constant, passive aggressive, you're great, but you're doing amazing, but you're doing this, but
And there's a difference between shaming and providing feedback. This is a whole other conversation, but
yeah,
we can do a whole slew of shows on shame, but if you haven't taken a look at your self-shaming, I think it's important to do.
a,
Try Brene first.
a
She's
hun-
a
100%.
wizard.
100%. And if you have any type of addiction problem, you definitely need to look at it. Like, no matter what your addiction is, because there's so much shame tied into that as well.
Mhm.
Because it's stigmas, right? It's society-based stigmas that create these situations, and we start feeling shamed by society for just living our best selves the best way we can when
Sure,
no when nobody's really been there to point that out, right? And I think there's a large generational tie-in as well, because
for
I think
sure.
it definitely gets passed down because people, when you see your parents live a certain way, or when you see your family members live a certain way, and it seems like an easy escape, you're going to run to it, right? And
Yeah.
and I think there's so much shame and guilt and blame and tied into that. When if you can get to a point where you just say, you know what, I did my best with it. I did the best I could
Yeah.
at that.
And when you're currently doing the best you can, when you're currently doing the next best thing, putting your best foot forward, being your true self, your authentic self, it's much easier to shed yourself of that doubt and shame and guilt and blame and all of those things. You can start to shed those layers and leave them behind when you're doing the work. But if you're not,
That's a
I have to tell you something, Ken. I was thinking that when he said that, I was thinking, and I didn't even want to bring it up because it's a whole other conversation about that. I don't think that you're ever broken, cracked for sure, and everyone has their scars and flaws and cracks, but broken, no. I totally agree with that. And I
and
think it's
and I,
important to use that verbiage. That's when you say that you were or are broken. I think that's shame talking.
it
Actually,
is, right. That's all part of it, right? So, like, being told when you're younger, you're broken, you're a mess, you're missing this, you're missing that, you can't do
Mhm.
this, you can't do that. At some point, you start really believing it, and it all comes across in how you speak. And I do it all the time still, not like I used to, right? And there has been an enormous shift there.
Oh my
But
God,
I
enormous as far as the way you talk about yourself. And I mean, it's not where I would love to see it, but we're
well,
all a work in progress. But you're not as even your comments like trying to be funny are not as self-deprecating and not as shamed and shameful. And I think that's a true testament to the amount of work you're doing.
yeah, well, I'm kind of obsessive compulsive, so if I'm
If
gonna
you're
do
gonna
it,
do it,
if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it way too much of it. We're good.
there's I can't relate at all. I don't know what it's like
No.
to be excessive or obsessive or any of that. When I do something, I just kind of half-ass it all the time.
Yeah, when your movers came up to give the estimate and said you need a separate truck for your journals, that was an issue. But that's okay, right? Like, I mean, it's cathartic and it works for you, so it's worth it. Um,
It is. At least we know ourselves. At least we know ourselves.
but it's okay. I mean, it's okay. If that's what's working for you, you run with it. Who gives a shit what anybody thinks? I mean, at the end of the day, if it is working for you, then who cares what anyone else says? If you feel good about putting something on social media, then put it on social media.
I have to say this to the world, and as in Kenny, who's listening right now, but I love how you bring these messages on to share them with the world, but really they're for me. So they're both, I just think it's fascinating how you think that I'm just going to take this in through osmosis and not hear you saying all of these messages are totally at me. And this is what he does, everyone. So congratulations, Mike. I found you out. Um, I love it. It's no, I don't mean every single thing that you say, but many things that you say. I'm like, that's totally for me. So they're always woven into our conversation, and I'm like, okay, got the message loud and clear.
It's not a shaming though. It's
Not
just an
at all.
awareness.
Not at all.
It's an awareness, playful thing,
It
and,
is
and
not. It's not shaming at all. It's really funny, and I love
it,
it. And
it's
it's
complete.
like, how do I
It's
parse through what you're, which one is that supposed to be for me? Oh yeah, that one's for me too.
but oh the first 17 were this one's not. I feel good. This one's not.
Okay,
We're
all
good.
right. This one's not
We're
about
good.
me. Okay.
But
So
but but it also it's my adoration for you, right? Because I truly do adore you as a human being, and
thank you.
you are a huge inspiration in my life, and sometimes by doing it this way, it helps us both, right?
That's why we share, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's very healing to share via, with your support in your community via social media or whatever, however you want to do it, our lives that we do, whatever. And sometimes it's easier for me than to just straight express it. So I appreciate that. And I said it in a definitely like a grateful way, not an obnoxious way at all. It's just really funny. But I just wanted you to know I know.
Okay.
I
But
know.
at the same time, it's also pointing out key things that will definitely help other people.
A
It
hundred, a
a,
hundred percent,
a million percent, because
a
we are
million
so
percent.
because me and you sitting in these windows are very flawed individuals, but we are working our asses off to be the best we can.
Really, really hard, really hard.
We,
So now
we
that
are.
everybody is like, great, we're going to learn from these two psychos. No,
Well, you
you
shouldn't have listened a few months ago, but you're probably better off now.
I'm glad we had this talk. This was great. Next time, just email me what
Just
your thoughts are. But
oh
it was
wow,
fun to talk
oh
about. Yeah,
wow, that
yeah,
was okay.
it's kind of
Wow,
funny.
yeah, that was
Uh,
okay.
so
Holy shit.
that's our end of the day recap.
Yeah, I think that's how we're gonna end that one, because I don't think I can stand up right now. I think yeah.
You have, do you have an outro?
No, feel free to run with this one,
Okay.
and then we'll both be then we'll both be then we'll both be stone faced for the 12 seconds that it takes to end it.
Exactly. And we're like, all right. Good night, everyone. It's
Good
been
night, everyone.
real. Have a great Monday morning. I'm sure we'll talk to
Seriously.
you tomorrow.
Definitely. Bye.